No one is allowed to travel on the road after sundown. Growing up, I knew that something was off about my childhood town. For one, there was a list of unwritten, but mutually understood, rules that we had to observe. These rules, in all honesty, were pretty much just cultural taboos passed down from the older generation, things like not leaving the rice bucket empty, as it is a sign of being poor, and avoid shaking one's legs when sitting down, as it symbolizes shaking off good fortune, to name a few. Some of the rules were definitely a little on the creepy side though, like never hanging out clothes to dry overnight, because dirty stuff may be attracted to them. But there was one particular rule that had always struck me as odd, I guess. The rule was simple and straightforward: no one is allowed to travel on the road after sundown. It didn't specify which road, but everyone generally took it to mean the twisting, narrow two-lane road that led down the hill to the nearest city 30 miles away. It was the only connection between the town and the city, so during the day it would often become congested. The more experienced drivers, my father being one of them, would rush to the city and back in the final hours before sunset when the road was less crowded. But no matter what, once night fell, no one drove on the road, not even my father, who'd rather sleep uncomfortably in his car overnight than to attempt the return trip home. One time, I asked him about the rule out of curiosity. He remained strangely quiet for a while before saying, "There are no street lights along the entire stretch of road, so it is dangerous to drive at night." I could tell from his eyes that he was hiding something else, so I tried pushing the question a little further. "Papa, why don't you just drive with the headlights on?" But my father simply shook his head. "It's too dangerous even with the headlights, Hui. When you become older and learn how to drive, you'll know why the road is so dangerous." I did grow older, but I never bothered learning how to drive, since my older brother already had a driver's license and inherited our family car. Unlike the rest of us, however, he never really cared about the rules since young, and much less the stupid driving ban, as he called it. My father caught him sneaking out of the house to drive late at night on more than one occasion, and it only got worse when he started dating a girl from the city. At some point, he just gave up and told my brother, in the sternest tone I had ever heard from my father, not to call home if he gets into any sort of trouble. My brother, of course, was over the moon. He loved to brag about how wonderful and freeing it was to speed along an empty road without a care in the world, and even persuaded me to go together with him a few times. I refused each time, though it would be a lie to say that I wasn't envious of him. But soon, my father's warning became a bizarre reality that I'm sure none of us would ever forget. It all started when my brother told us that he was going to bring his girlfriend over to our house after she had knocked off work at 7 p.m. My father didn't say anything, but my mother uncharacteristically voiced out her concern. "Son, it's best to let her visit during the day." "Don't worry, Ma, she'll be staying overnight in my room," he said with a nonchalant wave of his hand. "Can is can, but not today. She won't be free till next weekend, Ma." "It's all right, La." It was too obvious what my brother had in mind. I could only admire his tenacity as he hopped into our Toyota and screeched off into the vanishing sunset. Nothing seemed amiss at first, though my father and mother had a small argument in their bedroom that I couldn't catch before going to sleep early. Meanwhile, I was lying awake on my bed, secretly waiting for the sound of my brother's car to return so that I could sneak a glance at his mysterious girlfriend. "There's no way someone with his looks can land a pretty girl," was probably the thought running in my head when my ears caught the unmistakable ring of the telephone. Well, to be exact, my next-door neighbor's phone was the one ringing. Not many people could afford a landline back then, especially outside the major cities. My family hence borrowed my neighbor Ismail's phone whenever we needed to make or receive calls. Soon after the shrill ring stopped, Ismail knocked on our door loudly calling for my father. But despite him being a light sleeper, I couldn't hear the sound of my father getting out of bed to answer the door. I understood then that this was his way of teaching my brother a lesson. Ismail seemingly caught on to it too, because the knock soon ceased and I heard him walking away from the door. I hesitated, wondering if it was really okay to leave my brother to his own devices and God knows where, before poking my head out of my bedroom window which faced the road outside. A bang! Was it from Quan? "Oh, you're awake!" Ismail exclaimed, though there was a grim look in his eyes. "Yes, his car has broken down somewhere below the hill." I'm going down to see if I can help him out. Are you coming along? I agreed without a second thought and got into the front passenger seat of his silver cancel. Once we passed the last row of houses, it was as if the entire world had melted away. All I could see out of the windows was a thick, impenetrable fog of inky black. Ismail seemed unfazed, however. A bang, you haven't turned on the headlights, I said, panicking when I realized he was driving almost blindly at 60 km/h and increasing. No good, he replied calmly in Malayu. The noise is already disturbing enough, the lights will anger them. I didn't dare to ask who exactly were we angering. We raced down the hill for what felt like an eternity in complete darkness, cornering so sharply at each twist and turn that the tiny hatchback seemed to skid on two wheels. It was only until we spotted two flashing amber lights in the distance that Ismail finally put his foot on the brake. That's our car. I pointed at the Toyota parked by the roadside with its hazard lights on. Yes, I see it, Ismail muttered. But I don't see anyone in the driver's seat. Huh? But sure enough, when we neared the stranded Toyota, my brother was nowhere to be found. Instead, a girl sat in the front passenger seat, visibly shaken but otherwise unhurt. She didn't seem to react to our presence when Ismail stopped beside the car and rolled down his window. You all right? He shouted. When she didn't make a move, he pressed the horn until she finally turned her head towards us.